Grand Theft Auto 5 needs no introduction. This is one of the best-selling games of all time, and even more than a decade after its launch, this game is still popular, and technically it still holds up as expected from a Rockstar game. And for quite some time I've been trying to find the perfect opportunity to visit this game, and after the official announcement of GTA 6, I think this is the ideal moment to take a look back at GTA 5. So today in this video, and as usual, we'll go through all the graphics settings and examine the performance and visual impact of each one. And there are a lot of settings here, so let's not waste any more time and let's get going. Let's kick off with anti-aliasing and image quality. The game provides several options, including FXAA, MSAA, and NVIDIA's custom temporal technique TXAA. Now, FXAA is a cheap solution in terms of both performance and visual impact. And as you can see here, enabling it doesn't do much to clean up the image. Meanwhile, MSAA is more effective, especially when using 4x or 8x. However, it is more demanding compared to FXAA, as going to 2x costs around 14%, to 4x 29%, and to 8x 51%. And lastly, we have TXAA, and this one works alongside X2 and X4 MSAA, and it's only available if you have an NVIDIA GPU. Visually, it excels at reducing noise or aliasing from elements that MSAA can't handle effectively, like alpha textures, which are used to render foliage and trees. And as you can see here, when it comes to these objects, 2x TXAA can do a great job even when compared to 4x MSAA. However, TXAA has a tendency to blur the image. That's why I recommend applying some form of sharpening to the game if you choose to use it. And performance-wise, TXAA can cost around 4% compared to MSAA. In summary, for anti-aliasing, I don't recommend relying on FXAA, especially if you are playing at a lower resolution. If you have enough performance to spare, consider using at least 2x MSAA with TXAA if possible. And don't forget to apply some sharpening to tackle TXAA's blurriness. Next, we have population density. This slider adjusts the number of pedestrians and traffic. And on the performance side, when GPU bound, going from 0 to 10 out of 10 bars costs around 4%. However, when CPU bound, the performance gap is larger with around 11% when going from 0 to 10 out of 10. So here I recommend keeping this one at 5 or 7 out of 10, especially if you have a weaker CPU. Moving on to population variety, this one adjusts the number and density of duplicate NPCs and vehicles, and when using higher values, you'll see more different models used for these NPCs and vehicles, and it's quite challenging to showcase the visual impact of this setting, but performance-wise I couldn't measure any impact when GPU bound. However, when CPU bound, there is around 6% cost when going from 0 to 10 out of 10. So here, similar to the previous one, I recommend leaving this one at 5 or 7 out of 10. The next slider is distance scaling. This one controls the level of detail and how far out objects in the game will be rendered. And performance-wise, at this scene here, when GPU bound, this setting has negligible impact. And when CPU bound, there is around 3% cost when going from 0 to 10 out of 10. So here I recommend keeping this one at 10 out of 10. Next, we have texture quality. This one is self-explanatory. It controls the quality and resolution of the game's textures, as you can see here. And this setting has no performance impact, it only affects the VRAM usage. And considering how old this game is and its low VRAM requirements, I believe that most modern GPUs should not have any issues handling those very high textures. Moving on to shader quality, this setting affects multiple visual aspects at the same time. First, it controls the quality of parallax occlusion mapping. Like here, we can see how this setting changes the bumpiness of this surface, and very high looks more realistic and gives more depth compared to the other options. Additionally, lowering this setting to normal results in the loss of bloom and glow from bright lights, like this sun here. Using normal also makes anisotropic filtering no longer functioning correctly, even when set to 16x, as you can see here. And performance-wise at this scene, going from normal to high costs around 11%. and to very high 16%. So here, considering the visual compromises that can occur with the normal option, I recommend using at least high shader quality. Shadow quality controls the resolution and quality of shadows. Like here, we can see how using very high results in better quality and more defined shadows. Additionally, we can see that using anything but very high disables dynamic shadows cast by the car headlights. And performance-wise, going from normal to high costs around 3%. However, going to very high costs around 21%. So here, using anything but very high shadows will negatively impact the game's visuals. That's why I recommend using very high despite the significant performance costs. Let's move on to reflection quality. Now GTA 5 mainly relies on two techniques for reflections. First, we have planar reflections, which are mostly noticeable in puddles and bodies of water like here. And the second technique involves real-time cube maps. These are mostly utilized for surfaces like car bodies and opaque reflective buildings. And these reflections are dynamic and change based on the player position and the time of day. And the reflection quality setting affects the resolution and quality of both planar and cube map reflections. And performance-wise at this scene, going from normal to high costs around 2%, to very high 4%, and to ultra 11%. So here I recommend very high reflections. Reflection MSAA when used reduced aliasing in reflections, but from what I have seen, this setting only affects cube map reflections. Like here, we can see how using 4x or 8x results in cleaner and less aliased reflections. And performance-wise at this scene, going from off to even 4x has negligible impact, and going to 8x costs around 5%. So here during typical gameplay, you likely won't notice the visual impact of this setting, which is why I recommend turning it off. But if you really want to use it, don't go above 4x. Moving on to water quality. This one controls the quality and complexity of water surfaces and water simulation effects, as you can see here at this scene. And performance-wise in a steel like this, which represent the worst case scenario, going from normal to high and very high costs around 7%. So here I recommend keeping this one at very high, because lowering it to normal will compromise the quality of water with minimal performance gain. Testing particles quality proved challenging due to the settings requirement for a full restart to take effect, combined with the game's randomness when it comes to explosions and physics. But I managed to capture this example, which shows that very high generates more fire and slightly bigger explosion compared to normal. Additionally, high and very high options enable shadows for certain particle effects like here, and performance-wise there is no significant difference between the three options. So here I recommend leaving this one at very high. Grass quality is one of the most demanding settings in GTA 5, and it primarily adjusts the density of both close and distant ground foliage like flowers, grass, and bushes. And pushing it to ultra adds more shadows for foliage, as you can see here. And performance-wise, going from normal to high costs around 19%, to very high 22%, and to ultra 32%. So here normal has a massive negative impact on the visuals. That's why I recommend using at least high grass quality. Next we have soft shadows. This setting allows for more realistic shadows that can vary in softness depending on the distance of the shadow from the light source and the object cast in it. And for this setting we have four basic options: sharp, soft, softer, and softest, along with AMD's and NVIDIA's bespoke techniques CHS and PCSS. And performance-wise at this scene, we can see that going from sharp to softer has insignificant costs around 2%, but going to softest costs around 11%, and to AMD's CHS and NVIDIA PCSS around 14%. So here I recommend softer shadows. Post effects determines the quality of post-processing effects, such as bloom, where we can see that using high and above enables this effect. Also using high or above enables per object motion blur, which is more noticeable when using a weapon at first-person camera, like here. Additionally, the game forces a subtle camera motion blur effect when post effects is set to anything but normal. And performance-wise during typical gameplay, like here, we can see that going from normal to high costs around 3%, and going to very very high enables a depth of field effect on distant buildings and costs around 9%. And finally going to ultra costs around 14%. So here I recommend using high if you like per object motion blur, otherwise use normal to disable all post-processing effects. Next we have two separate settings for two post-processing effects. First, there is a slider that adjusts the intensity of camera motion blur, and it's only available when post-effects is set to high, and performance-wise going from 0 to 10 out of 10 costs around 4%. Next we have in-game depth of field effects, and this one is only available when post-effects is set to very high, and enabling it as you can see here can cost around 9%. Whether or not to enable these two effects is a matter of personal preference. Just keep in mind that in terms of performance, the in-game depth of field effects is slightly more demanding compared to motion blur. Anisotropic filtering determines the quality of textures when viewed from an opaque angle. And as usual, this one is not demanding at all, as going from off to 16x costs around 4%. So here I recommend leaving this one at 16x. Moving on to ambient occlusion, this one adds contact shadows where two objects or surfaces meet to simulate indirect shading. And it's an essential feature, and disabling it drastically compromises the game's visuals. And performance-wise, ambient occlusion has negligible impact, so here I recommend leaving this one at high. Next we have tessellation. This one adds more geometric details to some surfaces like here with the trunks of these palm trees. And performance wise at this scene, going from off to higher options costs around 2%. So here I recommend keeping this one at very high. Now let's move on to advanced graphics, starting with long shadows. This setting enables accurate shadows at dawn and in the evening time periods, and enabling these shadows has negligible performance impact, so here I recommend keeping long shadows enabled. High resolution shadows improves the quality and details of shadows beyond what the regular shadow setting can offer, but using soft shadows can mask the visual impact of this setting and make it less noticeable, and performance wise it can cost up to 12%, so here I recommend keeping this one disabled, especially if you are using soft shadows. High detailed streaming while flying is a level of detail setting that functions when the player is up in the air, and it can allow for more detailed ground assets and less pop-in during these moments. And here we can see that measuring the performance impact of this setting is challenging, but regardless of the performance considerations, I recommend keeping this one enabled, because you probably won't find yourself flying much in this game. Next we have extended distance scaling. This one is an upgrade to the regular distance scaling setting and allows for more details and view distance. And performance wise when GPU bound, going from 0 to even 10 out of 10 costs around 5%. However, when CPU bound, the performance impact is more significant, as going from 0 to 5 out of 10 costs around 14% and to 10 out of 10 around 25%. Therefore, I recommend keeping this setting disabled to achieve high frame rates and avoid CPU bottleneck situations. And the last setting is extended shadows distance, and this one increases the draw distance of shadows and adds additional shadows for distant objects, as you can see here. And performance wise this setting has insignificant performance impact, so I recommend leaving it at 10 out of 10. And based on everything we've seen so far, these are my recommended settings. Let's now do a quick performance comparison between optimized and max settings. Here in this city, we can see that on average, optimized offer a massive performance boost of around 118% with much better VRAM and CPU usage. And here in the countryside, the performance difference is even larger with around 139% improvement when going from max to optimized settings. And with that, we reach the conclusion of this video. Thank you so much for watching and for your time. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, and if not, leave a dislike. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for future videos, and hopefully I'll see you all in the next one.